Yo, what's going on, boys? Welcome back to another track day rewind. Now we've got our third track day that we're going to be showing you today. Now, the previous two, we've gone from not being able to drive at all, tagging walls, doing silly things, but not in the good tagging a wall with the rear of the car, more like understeering and hitting the front of the car. We also learned in the second track day how to initiate using the handbrake, and then how to, what the feel is with finding that sweet spot and then transitioning the car, and then catching it again. We sort of learned these little fundamentals and these little things that were really helpful on the third track day. Now, the third track day that we went to was unfortunately belting with rain. We had 100 millimeters of rain within 4 hours, so the track was absolutely saturated. Unfortunately, with the GoPro footage that you will see, I actually put the backing on the camera. This was the first and the only track day that I'd actually put the backing on the camera, thinking that because it's wet, water's gonna get in the car. Silly me, the camera's in the car. It would have been totally fine with an open back anyway. But I'm gonna have some subtitles on the screen. I'm gonna have some little bits and pieces so you guys can sort of familiarize with what's actually happening, but keep that in mind. And yeah, let's crack into it. All right, here we are, day 3, third ever track day, and it was bloody belting with rain. Now, I think I kind of got in my own head on this track day because it was wet. This is the first time ever drifting in the rain, and I think, basically I was scared that the car was gonna spin out, I would have hit a wall, I would have coasted off track. Being that we had 100 millimeters of rain, the grass is super slippery. It's basically a swamp off circuit. And I was just basically freaking out the entire day. You'll see my approach to corners is a little bit less confident throughout the whole day, but towards the end, we sort of half figure it out. It really didn't help the fact that the car was still misfiring. I wasn't actually able to rev the car out to the full rev range. As you'll hear in these clips, you'll hear the car misfiring and being really weird and breaking up at around 5,000 RPM, which basically gave me a window of, 1,000 RPM. Basically, when it came onto boost, it was breaking up. What had happened was, after this track day, we got the car tuned, and it ended up being a fuel pump issue, which makes total bloody sense. I thought it was spark, but it ended up being a fuel pump. But here we are, we've had a couple of little laps just to sort of warm up and sort of figure out the angle. Here's Scott in the car again saying, clutch kick, clutch kick, clutch kick. And in typical first drift day fashion in the rain, I never tested the window wipers and we didn't have window wipers. The motor actually almost burnt out in the car and we had to do a little repair in the pits. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. We ended up getting it all resolved, so we got wipers again, which is great. So Scott's basically trying to tell me you approach it the same way you would if you were in the dry, but being that it is definitely wet, you have to sort of be a little bit more careful when the car transitions, and be a little bit more careful when you pop the handbrake because the car will snap to angle. I did have federals on the front wheels, and then I had some China tires on the rear that just so the balance was a little bit off. The car was really gripped up on the front, so any tweaks on the steering wheel really made a major difference. And that was my first ever Manji in third gear. I only went left and right a few times, but I was wrapped. You could see the smile on my face. I was really, really happy that we managed to pull that off. I personally thought that we were crashing. I remember exactly in that moment. I remember it like yesterday. My ass was clenched. And because of the misfires throughout the day, we then sort of realized that in second gear, because I can't rev past 5,000 RPM, it's better off that I stay in third and just play with that 1 to 2,000 RPM range. We managed to actually do reasonably well in the wet, considering that we just kept it in third and just belted the clutch a bunch and just treated the car as if it was severely underpowered, even in the wet. And because we were in third gear and not second gear, we then have a lot more wheel speed, which then forced us to sort of spin. So we were sort of fighting an uphill battle, but man, we're 2.5 hours away from home. We just have no option but just descend with what we have and just try and have some fun. And as you can hear, we were rubbing the bloody wheels on the body there. We were basically hitting full lock. Scott was pretty much telling me, hey, look, even though it is raining, you can still throw full momentum into the corner because you're severely underpowered. So you actually have that to your advantage. You can treat this almost like it's a dry track day, but just maybe wash off about 20 kilometers an hour on your speed. And that's pretty much what we did throughout the day, and we managed to find that sweet spot in the rain. And it was great. I mean, at first I was definitely really scared in the first 2 sessions, and then as we came into the 3rd session, I had so much more confidence. The unfortunate part about a drift car is that you have no heating or AC, so anti-fog is your best friend, and that's one little trick of the trade that I learned on this wet track day, that when it's a cold, wet track day, anti-fog on the interior of your front windscreen is a lifesaver. Unfortunately, I just had an oily rag with me, so I kind of made it worse. As you could kind of just make out in the front windscreen, everything's really blurry. So I really had no option but just to drive through it and try and look through it. And look, it wasn't really a busy track day, so I wasn't all that bad. But yeah, it was definitely tricky to navigate the car. So right there, I did attempt to link the second M to the third M. I realized that mid-corner I was probably transitioning a little bit early, so I popped the handbrake again, then dumped the clutch. It just was a little bit too much sauce. And just there, I found that happy spot, and I was feeding the lock, seeing how much angle can I get out of the standard knuckles. And at the very end there, we hit the limit. We then realized, okay, so we can get a reasonable amount of lock out of the car in the wet, but we definitely found that limit and went, okay, let's give it another shot. In terms of my Track Day Rewind series, this episode is probably the least climactic. It's probably the one that I basically went back to square one, relearning the car again. Still applying those techniques that I learned from the first and second Track Day, but because it's in the wet, the environment completely changed the car, completely changed the approach. So all of the education, all of the learning that I did in Track Day 2 basically went out the window. And here we are, final session of the day. We're sort of getting the hang of it. It's a little bit tricky, like I'm still wrapping my head around the wet and how the car reacts. But yeah, just there, we kind of spun out. So I'm getting a little bit more confident with the amount of speed I'm throwing into the corner, and a little bit more confident with the amount of lock I'm trying to feed into the car. But I did find that the second gear, longer sweeping corners were a lot easier than the M section, because the M's are more tighter and technical. The car revs and bogs down a little bit. I try to clutch kick it, just like that. It's a little bit trickier, but look, I did find that the S's were a lot easier in the wet than the M's. But to conclude the track day, I had an absolute blast, and we learned some real key fundamentals in how to actually steer a car and how a car reacts in the rain. Now that concludes our episode 3 of Track Day Rewinds. Now, I told you it's gonna be a wet one. You can't hear anything. I goofed it. I put the backing on the GoPro when I shouldn't have. I was given some really crucial information whilst I was in the car driving with Scott, basically saying, you know, when you're low power and when it's raining, you have to try and really throw the car. You can still have some confidence in the car. And unfortunately, when back then I was thinking, oh shit, when it rains, it means that I can't do anything, and then it's gonna be slow motion, I'm gonna be spinning out heaps. I think my nerves sort of got the best of me on this day. But then, don't worry, I know the car runs like crap and sounds like crap, but don't worry at all, because in the next episode, we finally get the car tuned, and she ends up making about 200 horsepower. And man, it is a world of difference. But I hope you guys enjoy the video. Be sure to hit the sub button, hit the like button, and I want to hear some of your comments on those wet and rainy days you've driven. Tell me a little bit about them. Tell me how many times you spin out, where you crash into walls. A lot of people write their car off in the wet. A lot of people are really not that confident in the wet, which is sort of me, and I was kind of struggling. I want to hear some of your stories, so be sure to throw those in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.